Drew Barrymore has panic attack while filming. Adam Sandler holds her hand and helps her through it. The late morning sun bathed the Brooklyn set in warm, golden hues. A light breeze played with the loose edges of the tarps, shielding the equipment trucks. The cast and crew bustled around the cobblestone street, preparing for the next take. It was supposed to be a simple scene, just a walk and talk between two characters who had already won over audiences in a dozen films before. But for Drew Barrymore, today was anything but simple. She stood off to the side, clutching the script loosely in one hand. Her other hand trembled just enough to make her aware of it. The familiar sounds of crew chatter, camera clicks, and the distant honk of New York traffic felt amplified, pressing in on her. Her heart raced unexpectedly fast. The words on the page blurred. A tightness crept from her chest to her throat. Adam Sandler, in his signature relaxed outfit of cargo shorts and a worn baseball cap, was chatting with the director a few yards away. He laughed at something, his easy energy filling the space. Drew wanted to step toward him, to join the comfort of familiarity, but her legs rooted her to the ground. Her breath caught. "Not again," she pleaded silently. The last panic attack had come years ago behind closed doors. Now, surrounded by cameras and onlookers, the fear of losing control overwhelmed her. Her breathing grew shallow. She reached out and steadied herself on the back of a folding chair, willing herself to inhale slowly. The sharp smell of coffee and dust filled her nose, but it did little to ground her. Adam's voice cut through the noise, not loud, but tuned to her frequency. "Drew?" He was already walking toward her, concern replacing his usual playful grin. "You okay?" She tried to smile. "Yeah, I just need a sec." Adam wasn't convinced. He had known Drew long enough, since the wedding singer days, to spot when her vibrant exterior was covering something deeper. Quietly, without drawing the attention of the crew, he reached for her hand. His grip was firm, steady, a silent reassurance that she wasn't alone. "Hey, just breathe with me for a minute, all right?" he said, lowering his voice so only she could hear. He guided her away from the busy set, behind a nearby trailer where they could have a moment of privacy. The rush of panic began to slow, ever so slightly. Drew closed her eyes and focused on Adam's voice. "In through your nose. Out through your mouth. You've got this." They stood in silence, except for the rhythm of their breathing. The chaos of the film set softened into background static. After a few minutes, Drew opened her eyes. The tightness in her chest had eased enough for her to speak. "Thank you," she whispered. "I hate when this happens." Adam gave her hand, a reassuring squeeze before letting go. "It's okay, Drew. It happens to a lot of people. Hell, I get anxious too sometimes." He grinned wryly. "Usually before I have to wear a tux on camera." Drew chuckled weakly. The warmth of genuine friendship settled between them. I didn't want anyone to see. I didn't want to mess up the schedule." "You didn't mess up anything. You come first. Always," Adam said seriously. "We're a team. You know that." A production assistant poked around the corner tentatively. "5 minutes, Mr. Sandler, Ms. Barrymore." Adam nodded, then turned back to Drew. "You want to keep going today, or do you want me to tell them we'll pick it up later?" Drew shook her head. A spark of her usual determination returned to her eyes. "No, I'm good. I want to do this." Adam smiled, proud but not surprised. "That's my girl." They walked back onto the set together, side by side. The cameras waited, but so did a sense of calm that hadn't been there moments ago. As the director called action and the scene began, Drew knew she wasn't just acting opposite a colleague. She was working alongside a friend who truly had her back. The next day brought gray skies and the damp chill of early autumn. The streets of Manhattan, slick from an early drizzle, mirrored the heavy mood that Drew carried as she stepped out of her black SUV. The production had moved to the Upper West Side for exterior shots. And while the crew adjusted lights and prepared the block, Drew lingered by the curb, coffee in hand, staring into the distance. The panic attack had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. Not just the episode itself, but the flood of old doubts it had unleashed. She had survived decades in an industry notorious for chewing people up and spitting them out, yet moments like these still found her vulnerable. Adam spotted her from across the street. He waved, jogged over despite the light drizzle, and immediately took the coffee from her hand with a teasing scowl. Hot coffee on an empty stomach? Rookie move, Barrymore. She smiled faintly. I had a granola bar. A granola bar isn't breakfast. Adam softened his voice. How are you feeling? Drew took a breath. Better, I think, just tired. Adam nodded, walking alongside her toward the set. You've been pushing yourself hard. This movie isn't going anywhere without you, but I also know you can't carry everything by yourself. They passed extras, chatting quietly under umbrellas. The towering brownstones loomed above, stoic and unchanged amidst the city's constant motion. Inside the trailer, Drew sat down in front of the mirror lined with harsh vanity bulbs. The reflection staring back at her showed the cost of the past. 24 hours, slightly puffy eyes, tension in the jaw, a faint crease of worry between her brows. The makeup artist, a kind woman named Lorraine, worked gently to soften the traces of stress. As Lorraine applied powder, Drew stared at her own eyes. I don't know why I still get like this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. After all these years, Lorraine paused and met Drew's gaze in the mirror. You never know when it'll come. Doesn't matter who you are. What matters is you came back. The words lingered in Drew's mind as she stepped onto the wet pavement. For the next scene, it was a light-hearted moment in the script, one where her character, Ellie, bumped into Adam's character, Jack, while juggling too many groceries. It was classic rom-com awkwardness. As the cameras rolled, Drew found herself relaxing into the rhythm. The familiar banter with Adam sparked naturally, their decades of on-screen chemistry shining through. Laughter bubbled up between takes, and soon the weight pressing on Drew's chest began to ease. But as the director called "cut" after a perfect take, a stern voice interrupted the calm. Ms. Barrymore, can I have a word? It was Alan, one of the executive producers. His tone was clipped, his brow furrowed. Drew followed him away from the crowd, heart sinking. Alan's reputation for prioritizing schedules over people preceded him. We're behind, Alan said bluntly. I need you to be ready, fully ready. We can't afford delays. I understand you had an issue yesterday. That can't happen again. The words stung, not because of their truth, but because of their cold delivery. Before Drew could respond, Adam appeared behind her, casual but firm. She's good, Alan. She needed a few minutes yesterday, that's all. You've got no reason to worry. Alan pursed his lips but said nothing more. With a curt nod, he walked away. Drew let out a slow breath. You didn't have to do that. I did, Adam replied. Nobody gets to make you feel small. Not on my watch. The gratitude in Drew's eyes was unmistakable. The storm clouds overhead might have lingered, but in that moment, the warmth of solidarity outshone the cold drizzle. They returned to set, where the clapperboard snapped and the cameras whirred back to life. The day pressed on, but so did Drew, with Adam walking beside her, steady as ever. The sun finally broke through the clouds as the crew set up for an evening shoot at the Bethesda Terrace in Central Park. The polished stone arches and ornate fountain glistened under soft golden light. Tourists lingered just out of frame, trying to catch glimpses of the two stars who had been an on-screen couple for years, yet whose real-life bond was something deeper and harder to define. Drew stood by the railing, looking out over the rippling water. She wore a pale blue coat for the scene, but her hands were shoved deep in the pockets for warmth. The city around her buzzed as always. but she had learned to find pockets of stillness amid the chaos. Adam approached with 2 paper cups of hot tea. Figured you could use something gentler than coffee. Drew smiled and took the cup. "You're too good to me." He leaned casually against the railing beside her. "It's not about being good, it's about being human." There was a pause as they both sipped in silence. The familiar comfort of working together had smoothed the edges of Drew's lingering anxiety, but the day's earlier confrontation with Alan still gnawed at her. "Do you ever get tired of this?" she asked suddenly. Adam turned to her, thoughtful. "You mean the cameras, the hustle, the weirdness of being watched everywhere you go?" She nodded. He chuckled. "Every day. But I also love it. I love the people I meet, the stories we tell. I love working with you." Drew looked down, a soft smile tugging at her lips. "I love working with you too." The director called for final checks, breaking the quiet moment. As they moved back to their marks, Adam whispered, "You're doing great, Drew. One day at a time." The scene was a tender one. Jack and Ellie, after weeks of comedic misunderstandings, sat side by side on a bench under the falling autumn leaves, finally acknowledging their feelings. The cameras captured every subtle shift of emotion, the hesitation, the vulnerability, the unspoken understanding. Between takes, Drew noticed the extras gathered behind the monitors. They weren't watching out of obligation, but out of genuine captivation. That gave her a quiet sense of pride. As night fell and the crew wrapped, Drew and Adam walked out of the park together, the chill of the evening air biting at their cheeks. They passed food carts, joggers, and bundled-up dog walkers. The normalcy was oddly soothing. "You hungry?" Adam asked. "I know a diner nearby. Nothing fancy, but they make the best grilled cheese in the city." Drew laughed. "Lead the way." At the tiny corner diner, they slid into a cracked vinyl booth. No paparazzi, no fans, just 2 old friends sharing comfort food under flickering neon lights. Drew stirred her tomato soup absent-mindedly. "You know, I think what scares me the most is not the panic attacks. It's the idea that they might cost me everything I've worked for." Adam set his sandwich down and met her eyes seriously. "Drew, your worth isn't tied to perfection. You've built something real. Nobody can take that from you. Not even you." The weight of his words settled over her, warm and reassuring. "Thank you, Adam, for everything." He raised his glass of iced tea. "To friends who stick around." They clinked glasses, and for the first time in days, Drew felt lighter. The city outside kept moving, uncaring and unstoppable. But inside that little diner, the world slowed just enough for her to catch her breath. The production had reached its most demanding phase. Long nights, complex crowd scenes, and endless adjustments to lighting and sound. The unrelenting pace wore on everyone, but none more than Drew. On a crisp November evening, they filmed on the Brooklyn Bridge. Wind whipped across the open span, tugging at coats and scattering papers from the crew's hands. The iconic skyline blazed behind them, a surreal backdrop for what was supposed to be the film's emotional climax. Drew stood in position under the bright, unforgiving lights. The camera loomed. Dozens of crew members adjusted reflectors and microphones. A passing boat's horn echoed faintly below. The director gave the cue. In the scene, Ellie confessed her love to Jack, tears catching in her lashes as she risked everything. Drew delivered her first lines, her voice barely above the roar of the wind, but something inside her faltered. Her chest tightened. The lines vanished from her mind like vapor. The old familiar wave crept up. Dizziness, rapid heartbeat, the distant tunnel vision. She froze. The set fell silent. The assistant director moved toward her, confused, but Adam was already there, crossing the marked line without hesitation. "Cut!" The director barked, but Adam didn't stop. He placed his hands gently on Drew's shoulders. "Hey, look at me. Just breathe." Her eyes brimmed with tears, not from the scene, but from frustration and fear. I can't do it. Adam, not tonight. He guided her away from the harsh glare of the lights to a quieter corner of the bridge. You've already done it, he said softly. You showed up. That's enough. The words should have calmed her, but the emotion that had built up over weeks erupted. They're going to fire me, she whispered bitterly. They'll say I'm unprofessional, unstable. I've been down this road before. I know how they talk. Adam's voice was calm, unwavering. No one's firing you. Not while I'm here. And even if they did, who cares? You're Drew Barrymore. You're bigger than this movie. She laughed shakily through the tears. I don't feel bigger than anything right now. He offered his hand. Then lean on me for a while. They stayed there as the cold wind tugged at their clothes and the distant hum of the city pulsed around them. Neither spoke. Adam simply stayed present, the quiet strength she needed in that raw moment. Eventually, Drew wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. I want to finish the scene. Adam nodded, proud but unsurprised. Let's do it. Back at their marks, the director hesitated. Adam stepped in front of him. She's ready. Let the cameras roll. The take that followed was nothing short of remarkable. Drew channeled her vulnerability into the performance with aching honesty. Her voice cracked at just the right moment, her expression carrying the weight of everything she'd been through, both scripted and unscripted. When the director called cut, this time the crew burst into spontaneous applause. Adam gave her a small, knowing smile. You crushed it. Drew felt the surge of release, like breaking the surface after being underwater too long. Thank you for not letting me drown. Adam shrugged modestly. That's what friends are for. They walked off the bridge together, surrounded by the twinkling lights of the city that never stopped moving. For the first time in weeks, Drew's steps felt steady again. The final day of filming arrived with an unexpected calm. The chaos of earlier weeks had given way to a quiet sense of accomplishment. They were back where it all began, on a studio lot in Queens, the film's last interior scene ready to be captured. Drew arrived early. The sun had barely risen, and the cool morning air bit at her cheeks as she stepped out of her car. She stood, alone for a moment, watching the soft pink light spread across the skyline. The months of emotional and physical exhaustion had led to this one last hurdle. Inside the soundstage, Adam was already there, throwing a rubber ball against a wall with lazy precision. He smiled warmly when he spotted her. Look who's early. Drew gave a tired but genuine grin. Couldn't sleep. They rehearsed quietly, side by side, as the crew finished preparations. The final scene was simple, understated. Jack and Ellie walking through an art gallery, talking about the unpredictable paths life takes. It was meant to mirror Drew and Adam's real friendship, two people who had weathered storms, yet always found their way back to each other. As the cameras rolled, Drew found herself completely at ease. The panic that had stalked her for weeks no longer held power. The words flowed effortlessly, her emotions genuine but controlled. Between takes, Adam leaned in. You're doing amazing, Drew. I hope you know that. I do, she whispered back, her eyes soft. I really do now. When the director finally called "That's a wrap," the studio filled with cheers. Cast and crew hugged, laughed, and posed for final photos. Adam and Drew stood back from the crowd for a moment, soaking it in. I'm proud of you, Adam said simply. Drew looked around at the smiling faces, at the crew that had become family, and finally, at Adam. I'm proud of us. Later that night, they met again at the diner, their familiar booth waiting. The grilled cheese and soup arrived, and neither of them touched it for a while. Drew broke the comfortable silence. I don't know what happens next. I don't even know if the movie will be a hit. But for the first time in a long time, I don't feel scared of what's coming. Adam raised his glass of iced tea. That's the win right there. They clinked glasses once more, just as they had weeks earlier, but this time with a deeper sense of closure. Outside, the neon lights of the city reflected in the rain-slicked streets. Life moved on. Cars passed, strangers walked by. The unpredictability of the world felt less threatening now. Drew smiled at the thought. As they stepped out into the night, Drew linked her arm with Adam's. "Let's walk for a bit." They disappeared into the rhythm of the city, two friends, no longer weighed down by fear, walking forward into whatever came next.